following podcast is recorded and produced by the Podcast Precinct in affiliation with the network at bicbp-radio.com. The Podcast Precinct. Consistency, creativity, culture.
I like the nightlife. I like to party on the disco.
No, none of that here. None of that here.
No, we can't.
No, we're all about rock and roll, baby.
Are we? I thought we were all about disco.
We're all about rock and roll now. Disco is dead, daddy-o.
It is dead. It is dead.
Is super dead.
It is.
And baseball killed it.
Yes. The Chicago White Sox helped kill disco and the second game of their doubleheader. But we'll get into more as we get into, I think, one of the most famous promotions in MLB history is the Disco Demolition Night at Comiskey Park in 1979. And
yes, this is one of those topics where when he's Andrew, I'm Johnny.
We do a sports history podcast together.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. This is one of those topics that immediately came to mind when I was like, I want to jump into the more wild and weird and strange aspect of sports too. And this is one of the topics near the top of my list, the Disco Demolition Night. Now, Andrew, I've been to plenty of minor league games for my local Hickory Crawdads. Really, really love them. But they've not done anything. The only thing they blow up is fireworks on the 4th of July.
And it's probably because of this. I know there's been many times that baseball has had many different promotions. I mean, it's 100 and I don't know about Beck. I don't think at this point. I think at this point it was just in about 10 years of going 162 games.
Yes, which is really funny to me. That NBA basketball's regular season is 82 games, and like there's a growing number of people who are like, we need to shorten that. That's just too many, and it's 82. And I'm like, I get it, and I kind of agree, but baseball dwarfs that. It's like double that.
Well, I think that's the funny thing about promotions in baseball is you gotta how do you get somebody to come out to your stadium?
Yeah,
at least
on like a Tuesday. Right. It's something that's would normally be a special occasion. How do you do it?
How do you got to figure out these guys are making tons of money. Some guys are upward to 100 or to $30 million a year, sometimes more. So 81 games, you got to figure out how am I going to get people come to our stadium for 81 games?
Now, I will say on the much, how do I describe this show? That when HBO Max put out that Los Angeles Lakers show, it was a fictionalized version of the real history of it, if that makes any sense. With really good acting, by the way. But I famously said like the first 3 episodes, there was more boobs than basketball, which is fine. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy both, but it was just funny. But one of the things I did appreciate is that they really dived into the fact that one of the things that really helped bring in the Showtime era wasn't just the basketball players. It was all the courtside stuff that he would that the buses would do. They would, they kind of changed it. They were kind of the first in basketball to sort of turn have a real fun halftime show. They brought in the Laker girls. All this stuff, they turned it into a whole event. It wasn't just the game. But baseball has always kind of had this history of, we gotta bring people out. And I think it's also really important to discuss, obviously, music before we really dive into this night, Andrew.
Yeah, I think it's very important to talk about the disco craze.
Yes. Now, I can gratefully say that neither of us were alive for it. We weren't born yet. This is one of the things that we're not old enough to know.
No. I am aware of disco music
Yes, same
because
here.
of my mother, but
And I think there's some bands that just kind of, you know, eclipse their genre, like ABBA. Just throwing that one out there. It's the first one
yeah.
off my head. You know what I mean? Like there's some
Or-
bands that are just so big it doesn't matter what kind of music they were doing or that they do.
what is it? The Bee Gees that are still stuff
Yeah.
that people will still take inspiration or listen to today. Bee
Yeah.
Gees, Gloria Gaynor with the "I Will Survive." That's still a song that
Yeah.
you hear constantly. But for the most part, disco was just, I think it was the party music of its time.
It
Going
was.
to a
Yes.
disco was like our generation's rave, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's always been an era in history in which a certain genre of music kind of comes up and sort of takes hold, right? I mean, disco, grunge era in the 90s, country music really kind of hits at some point. So all your genres sort of do. And I would say, like in the early 2000s, would be your new metal bands going up against your pop boy bands type stuff, right? Like you get all this stuff, and I find it all really fascinating. I love music, in my early 20s, and I'll get more into this when we get into this thing. I was very much a music snob. I've thankfully grown out of that. But like if something didn't fit what I personally felt was art or music or whatever, I was very snobbish about it.
Oh,
And
so
I think it has a lot to inform here with this what happens at this show.
so you're
Or this
like
game.
that when Pat Oswald talks about himself at like 20 and
Yes,
that,
I related
you
a
know,
lot to that. Yeah.
Nickelback only does it for
Yes.
women and money. And it's like,
Yep.
why
Yep.
would you not want to do it for just women and money?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons I get into it, if you think about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was very much like that. But let's get into this part first. Team disco or team rock and roll, Andrew? I'm obviously team rock and roll. That's been my bread and butter.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I've jammed out to disco quite a bit, but
I mean, I like it.
it's
I'm not against it.
with good old rock and roll. I think it's just one of those music genres that just stand the test of time. You tweak it, you make it different, but it's still the same at the heart of it. So you really can't go against it.
Yeah, rock and roll has the benefit of that it can evolve. Disco, I think, it kind of pigeonholes itself. I'm sure there's a little bit of evolution it can have, but overall, you got to have that certain sound to it. You got to have a beat that people can dance to. And it was literally a whole scene in the 70s was this disco. I mean, it informed on everything from like who you partied with to what you dressed like.
I distinctly remember, I think it was, what's the movie called? The Son of Sam. And it's obviously about the Son of Sam or the summer of 77 or something like that. And John Leguizamo's in it.
Yeah.
And him and his wife have a friend that's getting into the punk scene. So they stop off at GB or CBGB's and he's like, yeah, I'm not going in there. Like whenever somebody mentions like disco and you can't like blend people, I think it's the part where he's like, yeah, I'm not going to go in there. Let's go check out Studio 54. And do that instead of support your friend and look awkward in this place because you're looking like John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever, which is another thing that really I think played on the whole disco as well.
Well, when I think disco, I automatically think to the movie Airplane. There's a whole great scene about that involves disco dancing that I absolutely adore. But yeah, go check out our other podcast where we talk about the movie Airplane, Nostalgia Funhouse. Go check it out, please. But yeah, disco was. We can't stress enough how huge this genre of music was at this time. There were so many radio stations that played purely disco music. There were literally, like Andrew was alluding to, clubs that popped up just because of disco music that people would go to because it was a scene, and it was good to be seen there, and you had to have a certain look and all this stuff. There's a lot there, but you also got to remember, rock and roll had already been around during this, and this happens anytime a certain genre gets big, is that there's this competing genre that feels like, hey, we're better than this. Why aren't we getting this recognition? And that's what's happened here. The rock and roll people are kind of feeling like, what is this disco stuff? It's awful. I really would compare this to early 2000s where the boy bands like your NSYNC and your Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears, all that type of pop music is blowing up the charts. But then you got like your new metal bands like Stained is the one I always think of because I was a big Stained kid. Your bands like that, we're like we're better than this stuff.
Or like even though kind of like a clash of like what's hip to not is like in the 80s when you got like Poison and stuff like that, but then you got Metallica coming on the scene. People are like, this is real metal.
So this is what always happens.
Poison
it always happens.
Real metal. You're just
like grunge was an answer to Nirvana kind of come out of nowhere and really put grunge on the scene when at that time that wasn't the kind of music that was big. So you just need something to want to stand out. It's a really weird. I think music is also very weird in that, and I'm guilty of this too. So I'm not calling anybody out other than myself. But where like you kind of latch on to either a band or a certain type of music, and you're like, that's mine, and I want more people to love it. But then when people love it, you're like, well, I was the first one to love it before you loved it.
Yeah, I'm different. That's so much with music. I never did that. I'm not gonna lie, I do it with sports. I think it's anything. I do it if I'm gonna pick one. I do it with sports. Like when somebody's like, I know I don't like the Bills, but then I don't like a lot of new Bills fans because I feel like it's a party and they're like, yeah, the Bills all the way, and it's like name like 5 players that used to play in the 90s, and they're like, I
do the same thing I do it without even meaning to. Yeah, I have a my cousin who is, I'm older than her, but she's not too far behind me, but she has a kid and he just graduated high school, just to give you an idea how old he is. But he's a big Charlotte Hornets fan too, like I am. And he commented on an Instagram post something about how man, we're just not like the Hornets just aren't very good. And I had to stop myself from responding to, I've been with them not being good since the 90s, since they were literally formed.
I figured you were gonna say you're gonna answer, when were they good?
Yes.
No offense, because they were up and coming, but
92, 93 was our peak, I believe. Alonzo Mourning hitting that game-winning shot was probably the best thing we've ever done.
Me being a sports basketball snob with my Celtics. When were you ever good? As I hold all my championships in my hand as a fan that did not win any myself, but
and I could just say we made the playoffs at one time.
We were in the play-in tournament last year.
Yeah, take that. But yeah, so that's just kind of setting the scene here. Disco is huge, but I also kind of think it's been huge for a while here.
Yes.
So you got this underwhelming entity kind of coming from underneath. Then that's the fans of rock and roll who are getting really sick and tired of this disco music.
Well, I think too, this is like way before social media. So
yeah,
way. So radio was the key. And in this disc jockey, it's so weird to say disc jockey because
I know
the term.
I miss them. Don't you miss them?
Yeah, I miss the VJs and the DJs.
Yeah.
But we'll say DJ. This DJ, Steve Dahl, is like leading this charge in Chicago.
Yeah.
He was fired from one radio station because they were like, hey, we're just going to play disco. And he's like, no, man, rock and roll, kind of like what we were saying.
Yeah.
So he goes over to, what is it? The Loop, WLUP, the Loop. And he starts his crusade against disco. He pretends like he blows up disco records. He scratches them and everything else. So
yeah. And this is during the time where DJs were major, like they're getting bigger and bigger. This is your era of like right before Howard Stern kind of gets there and gets big. So this is like just that era leading up to the Howard Sterns and the Opie and Anthony's and all of them. So he's kind of like it's when your DJs are sort of the personalities of your radio station, and they could literally get so big that they would bring listeners in. It was more than just the music. It was the whole thing. It was the music and the DJ that people were like, yeah, this is for me.
I still miss going to school, listening to the radio. And we used to have this throughout Western New York, just to, if you didn't grow up in this area, to put into context how powerful these people were and how great radio was, is there was a contest to see which school that could like collect the most pennies or something throughout all of Western New York. So it was like a badge of honor if they named your school in like the top 10.
Yeah.
And it would go to like charity. I still remember that. Shout out to Kiss 98.5.
Yeah. I mean, there's every area of the country has, or I mean, they still do, but obviously there's not near as what they used to be, but have a very famous radio station that they will listen to. Mine was 105.7 The Link, I think is what it was called, something like that.
Oh,
They're still around, but they're not what they
like
used
that
to
name.
be.
I like
Yeah,
that.
the Link, like
the
Zelda.
link.
Yeah. And there's a couple radio stations on there that I really like listening to as I was painting furniture back in the day. But yeah, that's
You would have to listen to radio if you're painting furniture.
yeah, that's the other thing too. You know, I have one of the main reasons that I miss DJs is they're the reason that I really, really felt that I was meant for doing entertaining people on the radio. Like I just got into it and it just really clicked with me, especially ones that had a sense of humor or they would have a comedian on every once in a while. And I'd be like, this is really clicking some bells and some buttons for me. And it led to me getting into podcasts because this is what podcasts are now. They're today's version of that, really. But we can't stress enough how big these DJs can get. They, if you get a good DJ or a charismatic DJ for your station, back then your station is going to be doing well.
Oh yeah, I mean, they made a whole TV show about radio.
Yes,
station. I forget. Give it
in Cincinnati. Yeah, that was a great show. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, that's Frasier. Guess what? Frasier, what was his job? He had a radio show.
And Wolfman Jack had a cartoon at one point.
Yeah, yes.
That's the only reason why I know who Wolfman Jack is is because of the cartoon, and I used to watch it. But so they're coming up with this idea of killing off disco. We're gonna kill off disco. We're gonna have this big night, and obviously, what's the best way to do it is do it in front of a crowd of people. But I'm pretty sure they didn't go to the Cubs in Chicago because the Cubs are like the classy organization, and they would have been like, "Oh no.
Well, they had first already had it set up to do at a mall.
Yeah, that would have been bad.
Yes, that would have been pretty awful. But their thinking was, they were more concerned about the number of people that would show up. They didn't think they would get a lot.
Yeah.
Was their thinking. So they were like, well, let's do it in a small-ish. I mean, a mall's still big, but a small-ish. It's not as big as a giant baseball stadium. So let's do it in a venue like that where we're fairly certain we can get enough people in the background so it doesn't look pathetic when we do this. Which I think is anytime you anybody puts on any sort of event, I don't care how big or small a set event is, that's one of your concerns, right? Like, are we going to get enough people where we don't feel pathetic for doing this?
That's funny because I was listening to watching Tales from the Territories, and they were talking about how they pretty much put on shows in a bowling alley.
Yeah.
So there's only so much seating in there, but there was bleachers they can roll in and out. So the advanced tickets would sell, but if none of the bleachers would sell, they would roll them away to make it so on TV it would make it look like it was constantly sold out.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't.
Yes.
So,
I mean, wrestling has a lot of tricks like that. If they don't sell out, they have a thing called the hard camera, and that's where the main camera's pointed toward the ring. So they'll move people in the crowd all over to that side, so it looks sold out. I mean, there's just little tricks you can do. But this is 79, and they're wanting to put on this event, so they're getting ready to do this in a mall. But at the same time, a certain baseball team called the White Sox, and I'm blanking on the name. Who was the main guy
for the White Sox?
Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting because I could see why the White Sox did this. Like if you
they have a history of
the owner does.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. The owner has a history of trying to do wild out there events at this point.
Yeah. I think he brought in a person that was like under 5 foot one time to play in a major league game.
He did, yes. Yep.
And Bill Veeck is very out there. He's like, you know what? Whatever will put people in the seats, let's do it. So
yeah. So think of him as like if one of my favorite baseball movies is Rookie of the Year. So just think of like how that kid gets put into Major Baseball. Like it's something that this owner of the White Sox would have done. He'd be like, yeah, give me that kid, and have him pitch for me.
Yeah, he's come up with so many. This is one of the first old time owners that I've ever remember like kind of hearing about and learning about. I mean, there's like Connie Mack and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the guy for the A's, why do I want to say it's not? Well, Walter O'Malley was the Dodgers. I can't. The guy from the A's is escaping me all of a sudden. My head's getting too good in my older years. But yeah, he was a guy that was like he was the Rick and Morty meme. Son of a bitch, I'm in.
Yeah.
No
Yes.
matter what. If he
Yeah.
thought he could put butts in the seats, which ultimately baseball is a business, as we learned. Sports.
Think Netflix like 3 years ago where they gave everybody a show.
Yes.
I mean, sure they'd cancel after one season, but if you came up with an idea, they're like, sure, let's do it.
Yeah. So they come up with Disco Demolition Night. It's going to be on a doubleheader, and it's going to be in between the first and the second game.
So they reach out to that DJ, and they're like, hey, because he was big during this time, and they're like, hey, we got this idea. Why don't you do the Death of Disco at our stadium? We think we can bring in some people for this. And there's some really fun names too during this. Who's the voice of the White Sox during this time, Andrew?
It was Harry Carey.
That's right. The very amazing and incredible Harry Carey. Got one of those incredible voices. I mean, it's so iconic that Will Ferrell made a great characterization of it. Like it's one of my favorite things. Hey, that kind of thing. If you're the moon and you made it a cheese, would you eat yourself? Like that type of stuff. He was doing Harry Carey there. Much better than I was, by the way, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's so that's another big name that's important here is Harry Carey. But yeah. What was the that stadium's capacity? It was like 52,000 or something like that.
Yeah, because at this point too, the White Sox suck.
Yeah,
they're no good. So why not do something? I think they said they were averaging 5,000 fans a game at this point.
Yeah, out of a 52,000 capacity place.
Yeah.
So when they were having a meeting before this night for the staff and stuff, it's like, hey, we're thinking we might get up to 30,000 if it's good. That's what they're thinking, which it would be big for them still, because like Andrew just said, they're averaging 5,000. So that's a big upgrade for them.
And they were offering a discount.
That's very important here. Yes.
If you brought in a disco record, you only paid 98 cents a ticket. And I looked it up, and tickets back then ranged for about $3.50 to $4 from what I could see. So you bring in your record, you pay your 98 cents, you get a ticket, they put it in a bin because they're going to blow it up. They're literally going to blow it up with pyrotechnics.
I think that basically in today's language, and I haven't put this in the inflation machine, but it'd be like if a ticket was like $25, but if you brought in a record, you only had to pay $5, basically.
Yeah.
It's a heck of a discount.
Doesn't work out good.
No. So again, they're expecting, hey, we might get like 30,000, 40,000 tops, but this thing takes off, Andrew.
Oh, yeah.
And the estimations for how many people showed up ranges anywhere from 55 to 75,000 people show up at this thing. Well, the point being, well over capacity for what this building is supposed to hold.
There's people trying to get in, jump over fences, everything possible. Because once again, I don't like in social media perspectives. Okay, you get your little event thing on Facebook. Are you going? Yes, no, or maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
And everybody types maybe when we know you just mean no. Just say no, it's fine.
But back then, they really didn't anticipate how many people really hated disco or just were like, hey, it's summertime. I'm looking to do something fun.
Yeah.
Let's go get crazy. And it's
you also got to think too that, like I was talking about earlier, it's going to be mainly a younger crowd, like in their 20s.
Oh,
and it's going to be all these people who, like me, when I was in my 20s, who know what music is supposed to be according to them. So they have this real hatred for this other popular music. And also, it's a baseball stadium. Guess what they sell at baseball? Beer. Yeah.
That's another good one we got to cover. Is at some point is a
Yeah.
10-cent beer night in Cleveland. But this is different. We're talking Disco Demolition.
But I think beer played a big part here too.
Yeah. It's just, well, you figured they had more money because they only paid 98 cents.
Yeah.
And, probably stole like their friend that they thought was a dork disco record or some younger
Yeah.
sister or older brother or sister. And they're like, hey, man, I'm going to take this and we're going to go to the game. Let's go, man.
So at the beginning of this, everybody's quite pleased because this is an incredible turnout.
Yeah.
Right. Even despite the problems that it would cause, that there's just actually way too many people. There's this really great, I would probably call it a mini documentary. It's one ESPN kind of did on this years ago. It's really good because they actually interview a lot of the players and the people that were there back then for this, including the DJ. Very fascinating stuff. But they were talking about how there were so many people, and I can't remember. I want to say it was Harry Carey, but I could be wrong. But somebody was talking about the smell, like it just smelled of just marijuana, just smelled everywhere.
I could imagine.
Yeah, and as a guy whose first experience of that was when I went to a Red Hot Chili Peppers concert when I was a kid, I had a great time for the record. I didn't partake, but I'm pretty sure I partook without knowing it, if you know what I mean.
Still remember the time. I was walking this is just recently. I was walking my son to football practice.
Yeah.
There's like this little like pond, and this guy is sitting there, and then all of a sudden he got up real quick. And I sniff, and I'm like, oh, that's what he was doing over here. And obviously I said it out loud, and my son's like, what? And I was like, he was smoking weed. He goes, how can you tell? And I go, because I didn't see a pet skunk with him, so he had to be doing something.
Yeah,
he had to be doing it. So he was like, it smells like skunk. I was like, pretty much. So
yeah, there's obviously a certain smell to it, but
yeah,
I'm not against it. I just don't do it myself. But that's that. I don't care if you do, for the record. Hey, if you're doing that and you're listening to us, thank you for listening. We appreciate it.
There you go.
And maybe it makes us better.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe we're better.
Yeah, you improve the experience for everybody doing it that way. But yeah, so there's just that was just kind of the
maybe we'll get
part of the underground rock and roll scene there.
Maybe we'll get some dispensary to like sponsor us.
Hey, bring it on, man! Bring it on. Sponsor us if you it's a lot of the United States now. It's totally legal. So, but I think it should. That's just part of what they were talking about. They're just kind of setting a scene for. That time, marijuana was seen as more of a underground type thing that was really looked down upon in a way. Back then.
Whole reefer madness thing from like 30s and the 40s. But
so that's a part of it. But that's just kind of setting a scene of just how many people were there. It's kind of like when I used to do a lot of these comic book conventions. When the people were let in, there was a certain smell. That's not always pleasant, but that's not everybody, for the record. Most of the time it was just fine, but that does happen. I mean, that's a joke that people say, but it's because there's reasons why people say that joke. If you're gonna go out in public, just take a shower. It's fine. 5-minute shower, you're good to go.
Stone Cold said that to us, remember?
Yeah.
But as the game is going on, like you said, there's some partying. Let's just say partying.
Yeah. And let's also say that I think one of the little documentaries I watched, and made sure to point this out, that the disco scene was almost sort of seen to a lot of people like an elitist type of thing. Like you had to dress a certain way. You had to be part of a certain group. And like for rock and roll, what did you need? Like a t-shirt and jeans, and you're good to go. That type of thing. So there's a big cultural clash here.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. No, not too much of it now, I don't think. But you would see that, I don't know, kind of like the goths, the punks, I guess, growing up compared to.
Oh, I mean, when me and you were going in high school, there was all kinds of quote unquote groups of different kids. Like you had everything from the goth kids to the preps, the preppy kids. I was blown away when my sister told me years later she thought I was one of the preppy kids. That really blew me away because she literally knew how I grew up and how I dressed and such. I wore sweatpants for like 10 years So why you would say that about me? I do not know. That is not a preppy way to dress. I promise you.
Now it kind of is. Like that's all I see most kids wear.
Yeah,
My kids don't wear
I'm strictly for comfort, baby. That's what I am for.
my kids don't wear jeans. My boys each own one pair of jeans, and I'm not lying, and they're broken out for like if they had to do a chorus concert, and that's all you had to do for a chorus concert, wear a pair of jeans and your school t-shirt that says chorus.
Or for picture day, right?
Actually, no, because why would you? It's only half of your body.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it's just from the torso up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So, it's, I mean, that's kind of been since people were a thing.
Yeah. But it's starting to get a little crazy as the first game's going on. They're throwing firecrackers and records onto the field.
They're getting restless. Some of the baseball players that I saw interviewed were like, yeah, they were literally slinging records like at my head as I was trying to play a baseball game.
The Tigers did actually win the first game 4-1, and it was getting so bad during all this stuff that the Tigers starting pitcher refused to warm up.
Yeah.
That's how bad it was getting. But you got Mr. Dahl. He's riding around and he's wearing army fatigues as you would, because you're going up against it's war against disco.
And he's in a Jeep.
Yeah, like it's a whole big Sergeant Slaughter DX taking over WCW. Sorry for the wrestling references, but that's where we kind of go to when it comes to everything. So they go to center field and they have all the disco records and it blows up. Boom.
Yeah, they put them all in a bin, but there's so many that even the bin's kind of overflowing. And he's like, let's blow this. So he's really playing it up too. He's doing, and I'm not blaming him for any of this. He's doing what they knew he would do. That's why they got him there and all this stuff. So he's like, yeah, let's do this. And he's really playing it up as he should have. And it's a really huge explosion. It's a pretty decent sized one. And bits of record go everywhere.
Yeah. Some people said it was like 200 feet. And then they're like, most people being realistic were like, it was about 30 feet high.
Yeah, again, that's a wrestling thing. He jumped 200 feet. It's like 15 feet. Still high, but 200 sounds better than 15.
And probably the biggest problem in all of this, or one of them, actually, there's so many. One of the biggest problem is when you blow something up, it's going to leave a hole, especially that much. And
not just a hole, but there's going to be a mess, again, of pieces of record and stuff that you're going to have to clean up before you can play the game again. Because again, this is in the middle of the second game, right? Like it's in the
big
half. What inning is this?
This is this was a doubleheader, so it's right before the second game.
Okay, yes, yeah. So they've already sat through a lot of these people are here to blow up records. That's why they're showing up. They had to sit through one baseball game. I'm going to go out on a limb and say a lot of these people, this may have been like the first time they ever went to a baseball game. Just guessing. I don't know. I don't know this for a fact. It's just me assuming.
I'm guessing a lot of this was you hear it on the radio, like I said, and it was like, what can we do tonight? I have a couple of bucks. I'm going to go steal this disco record probably from somebody in my family. Take it. We can get it up and have a good time and then just go blow up disco records.
Yeah.
But they blow it up and this is when craziness ensues.
Well, they blow it up and then that DJ kind of leaves the field.
Yeah.
And as they're starting to clean it up and they're even warming up for the next game, slowly they start noticing people are coming in off the onto the field where they shouldn't be. And more and more of them start running onto the field. And then before they knew it, they were just everywhere. The whole field is just covered with a sea of people who are going wild, and they start lighting stuff in the field on fire.
Well, why not?
Just literally think of it. Really reminded me of, because you can see video of this, but it really reminded me of the documentaries about what was that big concert? Dang, I'm blanking on it. Woodstock.
See, tell you, it's the brain, man. It doesn't.
Yeah. My brain's just filled with a lot of useless Ninja Turtle information, and it pushes other stuff out. But yeah, it really reminded me of that. In that, like, why do you have to have fire here? What's this? But of course, there's fire. They're just damaging everything in sight. One of the people claim that they saw somebody like take the urinals off the wall.
Stealing second base, the bases
Yep,
stolen,
literally stealing it, literally taking it and
helmets,
stealing it.
bats, like anything that was not nailed down.
Yeah, and the guys who go up and down trying to sell you concessions, they were like, yeah, they would just steal stuff, and there's nothing you could do about it because you're kind of stuck in a sea of people. What are you gonna do?
It said 5 to 7,000 or 5 to 7,000 people rushed the field.
That's incredible.
Supposedly Michael Clark Duncan was there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
20 years old. And during the melee, Duncan slid into third base and had his silver belt buckle stolen. And he said he went home with a bat from the dugout.
Oh man, I bet it was legally obtained.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the other stories I thought was really funny was there's these guys who had brought their own alcohol and they were sitting in one of the dugouts.
That is awesome.
When one of the general managers or the baseball, I can't remember, somebody on one of the teams came out and said, "Son, hand me that alcohol and get out of here." So they handed him. They go, "Yes, sir." So they handed it to him, and they got out of there. But yeah, so they literally took over the whole thing. They took it over.
They pleaded everything else. Harry Carey tried to tell people to go to the stands. Bill Veeck tried to get people to go back to the stands. Harry
Carey tried to start a song.
Yeah,
Take me out to the ball field, which they were singing along with, by the way, but that didn't stop them from what they were doing. They just like, hey, I'll sing along as I'm catching stuff on fire.
So what do you do when things get a little out of hand at a baseball stadium? You call in the police, and the police shows up with riot gear. That's how bad this got. That you got to call the police, and it's just not, normal police. You got to call in riot gear police.
It reminds me of that scene in Elf when they're like the special police on the horseback show up, and they make a big deal about how hardcore these guys are.
They start going with but they bring in the police, and the funny thing is like,
oh, for the record, not the band, the police.
Yeah, no, Sting wasn't there.
Yeah,
and not the wrestler Sting.
We just went so deep into different references there.
Yeah.
Somebody please draw the police, but the band police in riot gear, and one of them being the wrestler Sting. Of course, black and white crow paint. That's the version I want here.
They bring in the police. The police actually do get things settled down. And the funny thing, I saw that only 39 people were arrested.
Yeah. Well, they couldn't catch a lot of them.
True.
If you can see video of a lot of police chasing after people, and they just weren't going to get them. Some of those people were really quick. But yeah, so they finally get the crowd under control. But at this point, the field, because you can see it, the field is just a complete mess. And that's when I really started feeling bad for the people who had to clean this up. Like, that is not a job that I would wish to have, especially then.
This is actually the last American League baseball game to be forfeited.
Yeah. Yeah. The field was so bad that they couldn't play the next game of the doubleheader, the second game. So the White Sox had to forfeit the game. They lost the game because of this.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure really just dampened their hopes of winning a championship that year. I'm sure, because they were so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how bad it was, though. The field was in such a disarray. They said there was divots and just holes everywhere in this field after this, and just debris as far as the eye could see.
Oh, it was bad. Oh, yep. They were that didn't matter. They ended the season at 73 and 87.
So they could have been 74 and 86 if it wasn't for this.
Yes. And they ended up 5th in the American League West.
Yeah. And they could have still ended up 5th if it wasn't for this. But so it's just really sad.
There's only 2 other teams worse than the White Sox in that division that year.
Was one the Charlotte Hornets?
No.
I know it's a different sport, but they might as well just put them last in all the sports.
No.
Yeah. So they probably vowed to never do another event again, but like Tom Brady retiring, or they're going to just keep doing it again and again, I'm assuming. But But one of the fascinating things about this is it was kind of a signal of the end of an era here.
Yes.
One of the things that I saw was that seemingly overnight, radio stations were like, "Yeah, we're not doing disco anymore. We're switching right over to rock and roll," because it was kind of a knockout blow. It was like Mike Tyson knocking out his opponent here, and rock and roll was Mike Tyson just knocking him out, and that's pretty wild to me. So in a way, baseball killed the disco star.
Well, you got to think about it. If you're running a radio station, you see that many people show up, and not condoning it, but you see that reaction to something like a raid on a Tickle Me Elmo or a Cabbage Patch Kid. You're like,
Yeah.
I think we got something here.
Yes,
And that's how,
yes,
and that's how it could. That's how pretty much they ultimately killed it. Is it was like a cheap focus. Well, not for the radio stations. It was a cheap focus group. For the White Sox, not so much.
yeah. The White Sox to this day blame the radio station for this. I don't think anybody could have
I think
prepared for what happened.
I
Honestly,
think it's a mutual.
agreed. Yeah,
It's got to be a shared blame.
both are at fault because obviously White Sox were not prepared for this, and I don't think the radio station expected this when you really should have. If you're going to put on an event, you should really kind of look at every aspect of it, what could happen, and be prepared for what could happen. So that's not what they did. What they did is what happened is what it's what happened. It's pretty wild. One of the wildest events to happen on a baseball field that wasn't at all baseball related.
Yes. Yeah.
Pretty incredible.
It definitely was awesome. Failed promotion. Just didn't work out the way that it was supposed to.
Yes.
But it will be ever remembered in sports history and pop culture history as well.
Yes. This is one of those events that kind of does both here.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Transcends both and is in both of those categories. But I think that's the story of Disco Demolition Night. Very, very, very interesting.
Yes, pretty incredible. Highly recommend. There's a lot of really fun little mini documentaries on YouTube. You can look for this. I encourage you to find the ESPN one just because they interview a lot of the people who were there, and it's really fascinating. It's from a few years ago because I think Harry Carey's interviewed on it, and obviously he's sadly long since passed. But
I would watch that one, and if you're looking for a fun one, and you want to learn about Disco Demolition, and it's narrated by Bob Odenkirk,
I'm on board for this.
Go check out the Drunk History one.
Yes. That was very fun. Yeah. I would just check out any Drunk History. Honestly,
Yeah,
it's all pretty funny. So go check those out. Also, check out our Facebook page, Andrew. What's our Facebook page?
The Retroactive Sports Podcast. Go check that out. Got some fun things. Every day is Today in Sports History, and then also some fun quote questions, appreciation posts for players that may not be Hall of Famers or people don't really think about on a daily basis, but we like to show them appreciations.
Yeah, they're Hall of Famers in my heart. The all hail the king, Jake Delhomme, of course.
Like I think our last one we did hockey wise was Eddie Belfour. We've done Detlef Shrimp.
Yeah. I'm sure I'll force Andrew to do Muggsy Bogues soon.
You just force away. Send me a message.
Muggsy Bogues is coming soon. We're going to show appreciation to
we've already done
5-3 point god. I like to say that guy was incredible.
We've done Larry Johnson. Got a great response out of Larry Johnson and
see Grandmama, man. People love Grandmama. I'm telling you.
But
yeah, so go check that out. Andrew does an incredible job with our social media, so please make sure you check that out.
And I think that is about it. Check us out. I'm actually gonna start releasing. This is gonna be our last Friday one, just for time consuming. But we're gonna start releasing on Saturday, so every other Saturday, just to kind of help me out. With my editing.
A great way to spend your weekend, I think, for people to listen to this. Smoke some weed to listen to us.
And also, I like to think that we're taking over the weekend because, like you mentioned, the Nostalgia Funhouse comes out every Sunday. So we are taking over weekends. We own it.
Yeah,
That's
just make a
their
weekend
thing.
of us.
Yeah. To make a weekend with Andrew and Johnny.
Yeah,
Fill up a cup of coffee and just have a good time.
yeah, yeah,
Whatever floats your boat.
yeah.
As
I
long
like
as
it.
you're listening.
Yeah, that's all I care.
Yeah. And if you
Selfishly, that's all I care. Oh, and make sure if you get if you get a moment, go to wherever you're listening to this on your podcast app, and if you got a chance, and if you want to, give us a review. It helps us out.
And I think with that being said, disco is dead.
It sure is, and it's never come back. Ah, 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 ah. Disco is dead. Disco is dead.